Okay, Unit 2, Chapter 5, Lesson 3. Objective: How did the French establish a settlement in Texas? We will learn about the French explorer La Salle. I will understand the effects of La Salle and his stay in Texas. Here he is, the French explorer René Robert Cavelier La Salle, or de La Salle. La Salle leads the French into Texas. Guiding question: How did the French establish a settlement in Texas? After Spain's discoveries and conquest, other European countries wanted colonies in the New World too. In the early 1600s, England, France, and the Netherlands started colonies in North America. By the late 1600s, France was challenging Spain in the region that includes present-day Texas. The first French explorer to enter the land that is present-day Texas was René Robert Cavelier Sieur de La Salle. In 1682, he led a group from Lake Michigan. They went down the Illinois and Missouri rivers. They went on to navigate or find a way to pass over or along the entire Mississippi River. They followed the Mississippi all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. La Salle claimed the entire Mississippi River Valley for France. He named it Louisiana after his king Louis XIV. When La Salle returned to France, he asked to found a French colony at the mouth of the Mississippi River. He may have hoped to use this colony as a base from which to capture silver mines in northern New Spain. The French king agreed. On August 1st, 1684, La Salle led 4 ships carrying about 200 colonists, and they sailed off in search of Louisiana. Well, the effort did not go well. However, La Salle quarreled with the ship captains. The ships reached Haiti and the Caribbean. Then a Spanish privateer captured one of the French ships. A privateer is a government-sponsored pirate ship that attacks the ships of other countries. The captured French ship contained much-needed supplies. Even worse for La Salle, he was not a skilled navigator. He missed the mouth of the Mississippi by 400 miles. In 1685, La Salle decided that the expedition must go ashore. He chose a spot on the coast of Matagorda Bay, not far from present-day Corpus Christi. However, the problems continued. During the landing, one of the ships wrecked. Once again, needed supplies were lost. Now La Salle had only 2 ships. La Salle's group built a settlement on the banks of Garcetus Creek. The outpost became known as Fort St. Louis. It was actually only a stockade, or a crude fort built of logs. The French also built huts and a small church. Overhead, they flew the flag of France. Now France had a claim in present-day Texas to rival Spain's. French troubles. What were the effects of La Salle's stay in Texas? Many settlers had lost faith in La Salle. They decided to leave for home on one of the ships, Le Joliet. That left the group with only one ship, La Belle. Over the next 2 years, La Salle had several explorations from Fort St. Louis. He was looking for the Mississippi River. He was not able to find the river. While La Salle was away, the settlers at Fort St. Louis faced serious challenges. Most of their crops failed, so they did not have sufficient food. Some died from disease. Some settlers were killed by the Karankawa who lived in the area. Another disaster hit in February 1686. La Belle came loose from its mooring, or tie-up, during a bad storm. It was wrecked when it ran aground on the Matagorda Peninsula. Now La Salle had no ships, few supplies, and fewer than 40 followers. He decided to try to walk to the nearest French outpost about 1,200 miles away on the Great Lakes. If he could complete the trip, he would be able to send supplies to Fort St. Louis. La Salle brought 17 colonists he thought could make the journey. He left behind about 20 others, including women and children. By the time they had reached East Texas, members of the expedition refused to continue the trip. They led a mutiny, or a revolt, against La Salle and murdered him on March 19, 1687. 6 of the group decided to reach the French settlement of Quebec in Canada. A small group stayed in East Texas. Despite great difficulties, the remaining French settlers at Fort St. Louis survived without La Salle or new supplies. Then, sometime around Christmas 1688, the Karankawa attacked the fort. Historians know this from a report written by an eyewitness named Jean-Baptiste Talon. 5 children were captured and adopted by the Karankawa, but most of the colonists were killed. For many years, there were rumors that some colonists from Fort St. Louis massacre were still living with the Native Americans. Though Fort St. Louis did not prove to be a lasting settlement, La Salle's efforts had important effects. For France, his explorations led to the beginning of trade with Native Americans of the Mississippi River Valley. The French never did really settle in Texas. However, French trading activity there continued until the early 1800s. The most direct result of La Salle's explorations was that the Spanish began to shift their focus from western Texas to eastern Texas. They did not want the French to take over lands that they considered parts of New Spain. Spain had not paid much attention to the area for years. Now the Spanish renewed their explorations of the Gulf Coast. They wanted to settle in the Texas area of New Spain. The La Belle, here's an archaeological site. La Belle shipwrecked in Matagorda Bay in 1686. She remained hidden for over 300 years until archaeologists discovered her in 1995. To aid in the salvage effort, a huge enclosure called a cofferdam was built around the remains. The water was pumped out of the area, exposing the ship and allowing researchers to examine the wreck. The hull of La Belle was found in remarkably good shape, along with much of cargo. The hull was dismantled piece by piece and reassembled at Texas A&M University. Studying the hull has allowed researchers to learn the shipbuilding techniques of the time. I think that's so cool that they found that. Terms to know: navigate, privateer, stockade, sufficient, and survive. And here is your study for C5 L3 Skyward Quiz. Now you know about La Salle. I do not know how to stop this recording.